Hi, I'm Josh, the Dad of Hobbies, and today's hobby is Futurama. And I am joined by my fantastic friend Bobby, who is the only person I know that knows Futurama at least as well as I do. We are talking today because Futurama is about to debut yet another season. It is, as one of the taglines said, the show that just won't die. Um, you and I have talked about this already. I shouldn't admit this as a fan of the show, but it might be time. I think
I
I think it's
think I think as a fan of the show, it's the right thing to do to admit it and
time.
say that I don't I've had numerous fandoms in my life, and I think one of the worst things that a fandom can do is just blindly follow anything new as though it is still the greatest thing that has ever been. I think a fandom owes it to the creators of whatever it is to say like, hey, you did something amazing and it lasted a really long time, but it's not what it was, and it's time to let go and just let the amazing work that you've done live on without having to try to keep doing it.
Yeah, and Futurama is tricky because the tagline was the show that just won't die, but it's because the show kept getting canceled in the worst possible way. So, and for anyone watching who does not know what Futurama is, I don't know that we can ever be friends. And B, Futurama was a show that was made by Matt Groening of Simpsons fame, aired just after the new millennium, so in 2000.
Uh, Graining, thank you very
Granted,
much.
apologies if Matt, you're watching. Sorry, come on the show. I'll apologize to you in person. Uh, and the premises of a a guy in his 20s, who was a pizza delivery guy, typical Gen X slacker, gets accidentally, or maybe not so accidentally, frozen in a cryogenic tube, and wakes up in the year 3000, and basically gets to start his life over. Um, and 25 years ago, when the show first aired, not only was the premise fun and fresh and interesting, and it was very cool to see a more adult-esque cartoon, especially coming out of the creators of The Simpsons. But it was at a time where the future had become now, right? Like everybody born prior to the year 2000 was anticipating what the new millennium was going to be, and this show solidified that by telling us about the next millennium. But as the show has continued, and it had four seasons on Fox, got canceled, as is typical for Fox, got a massive following from Adult Swim, reruns on Comedy Central, and Cartoon Network. And Comedy Central picked it up, did a couple movies, picked up for more seasons, then got canceled again. And 11 plus years later, Hulu has now picked it up, and we've gotten two seasons so far. We're about to get a third. And so you've got literally a quarter of a century of this show continuing in some fashion. But there is, to your point, diminishing return on that investment over time here, and it feels like it can be let go. It has done what it needed to do, and both from an audience who grew up with it, as well as, frankly, in show canon, Philip J. Fry, the main character, has been in the future longer than he was in the past, and that alone, the premise of the show is no longer useful. It doesn't work anymore. You cannot make references culturally to the last 25 years and have Fry be the everyman character who is representing us if he doesn't know what happened anything past December 31st, 1999.
Right?
And it right, and they tried doing this in the last season where he happened to know some famous singer whose name is escaping me, but she wasn't even born in the year 2000. Like she's been a teen pop star from the last couple of years. Like it doesn't make any sense. Um, and so if you can't do cultural references that are relevant for the last 25 years and doing them from 99 previous, either loses an audience that you're trying to gain or is rehashing jokes from the audience you already had, what's left? What do you got?
Yeah, no, I mean, and you're absolutely right about the material. And the other thing that I hate to admit, because I love the cast of the show so much. I wish more current cartoons would use professional voice actors and not try to go for the celebrity who just sounds exactly like themselves. because that way they get a name on it. I mean, I am a little bit of a voice actor, nerd. I love
Little
and and
bit.
and the cast of this show. I mean, Billy West, Maurice LaMarche, Tress MacNeille. I mean, you've got some of the greatest to do it in the last 30 plus years now.
Yeah.
Um, and but the fact of the matter is, they are getting older. And when you get older and you get into your late 60s and into your 70s, you see this with aging musicians too. Their voices just aren't the same. And so you listen to them doing these voices that they've been doing for 25 years, but that they started in the middle of their career. This isn't something that they started doing in their 20s, like many of the Simpsons voice actors did. And it just, they are sounding a little bit thinner and a little bit more tired and a little bit more like they're having to work a little harder for it. And I'm thrilled they're still doing it. And I wish there was a maybe there is a next generation I mean, John DiMaggio is a little bit younger than all of them, or than a number of them, but it just doesn't quite sound the same as it did then either. And so, I think you have to know kind of when it's time to let that part of it go too. I wish these guys could do this forever. But the fact of the matter is they can't, and they're not going to be around forever either. I'm glad they all still are. I mean, like, thank God for that. You look at, they've talked about rebooting shows like The Critic, and you look at that voice cast, and half of them are no longer with us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not only a good point, I think it speaks to the fact that the show or shows like this, especially animated shows where you have to rely on solely your voice. Futurama certainly wasn't a flash in the pan, but it was of its time. And that time, both for the show's premise and the actors themselves, has passed. Now, having said all that, there is still much love in my heart for Futurama. And so before we start recording, I asked Bobby to put together his top 5 favorite episodes. And we both clarified that best and favorite are not necessarily the same thing. And I think
It's a
if
very good
anybody,
point.
yeah, anybody watching this or anybody who knows Futurama, pretty objectively would say, the best episodes are the dog one, the brother one. You probably anything with Fry's family, certainly. There's a few more in there, but uh, sometimes best and favorite can be the same. But for us in particular, who know the show to the point where we can do almost, I think we could do an entire episode dialogue for dialogue without looking at the script.
Pretty close.
Yeah, which tells you how many friends we had in high school. Uh, I think for us there's some hidden gems in there as favorites. So I think the way we do this, we'll each do our rank, right? So we'll both say our number 5, then number 4, right? So we'll go in turn here. And I'm suggesting that A, to stretch this out a bit, and B, because my number 5 is going to make you hang up the call. One of my favorite episodes is one of the ones that most of the Futurama fandom at best dismisses, and I have seen active hate for it, and I love it. It is never going to make anyone's best or top list. My number 5 is Naturama.
I just I guess listened to it. It's one of those shows that I fall asleep to
Yeah,
not that long ago, and I don't hate that episode at all. I mean, you're right, it is not in my top 5. But I have no problem with it as a Futurama episode. I want to hear more about what you love about
yeah.
it.
So I'll recap it for anyone who doesn't know. So Naturama is one of the several episodes where Futurama does this sort of vignette type of episodes where they either show mini stories instead of a full 22-minute episode, or they do these sort of alternate type of stories. So Naturama was a spoof of the old Mutual of Omaha nature documentaries, right? And in fact, in the episode, it's Mutual of Omicron. Haha, good old Futurama. So this was 3 short stories about various animals. You get the first one of the life of salmon, and it plays on the relationship between Fry and Leela. Then you get the life of the Pinto Island tortoise, which is Professor Farnsworth and Mom, and then you get the walrus. I'm sorry, the
Elephant seal.
elephant seal. Thank you. Sorry, elephant seal, which is Kif, Amy, and Bender. And I will admit that last one is my least favorite of the 3.
I
But
think
to
I would agree
me,
with you on that.
yeah, doing the doing the relationships in Futurama, the stable relationships in Futurama are always Fry and Leela, Professor and Mom, and Kif and Amy, right? And so taking three mini episodes to focus on those relationships and then doing it as a nature documentary is clever, it's cute, and the amount of one-liner references, not only in concept of what they're showing in this episode, but back to the show. So, for instance, the bear being Burr, right, instead of Lur,
Yeah.
right? Um, the when all the salmon are going downstream, and somebody, the nature fact is, oh, 6 and 10 survive, and then you get, and each time they swim down, one of them dies, right? It's just funny. It's funny to watch. Um, I'm sure all the animal activists watching are thrilled with this.
Hermes limboing on his way
Right,
upstream.
him going out, right? And but each one also ends really sweetly, right? Like Fry and Leela being in opposite rivers, and he basically has to figure out how to get over to her river, even though it goes against his natural salmon instinct, right? Um, or the narrator who, and they have a fake Morgan Freeman narrating it, which is also hilarious. The narrator saying something effective, no one's entirely sure, but salmon use, the magnetic poles, or internal navigation, and then one of the fish says,
Hermes, it's
we're just
Hermes
going to
says
do it.
everyone
I
pick
just
one of
told you we
everyone
were going to
pick
do
one
it.
of these three things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, it's clever, it's funny, it's witty, and it's out there enough that it's different than the Futurama episodes, or sort of the mythology of Futurama relationships, but while still being true to what the show is, which is the relationships of these characters in a setting that is familiar to us as both humans and people in our time, but is inherently unusual and different. And I think that episode is wildly underrated, doesn't get enough credit for what it does, and is just clever and witty in all the best ways.
Mhm. Um, yeah, no, it's really of those episodes where they do those kind of like three part of three different, non-canonical things in an episode. It is one of my favorites, I have to say. And that's also because I am a nature and animal lover, and I do know a lot about those things. And as we have come to expect with Futurama, many of the facts that they give are completely accurate and true. Now they sometimes take them to the extreme for humor in the episode. But the fact that they take the time and effort to do that is something I think we both love about many episodes of the show. And I will actually, I was gonna, if I may, before I get to my number five, one of my honorable mention episodes, it is not in my top five, but I have to shout it out, is The Prisoner of Benda.
Yes.
And the reason it is an honorable mention is, I mean, and it's a very good episode. Nothing about it really makes it would put it into that top five, but it is the first, and to my knowledge, only episode of television for which a new mathematical theorem was proved for the plot of the show. Ken Keeler, for whom we all know Dr. Ben Bueller in the show is
Yes.
named, who has a PhD in mathematics, proved a brand new formula about how many mind swaps it would take to get people back into their own minds with the plot of this episode. And the formula can in fact be seen on the chalkboard in the background of one of the scenes. And to that point, and again, I don't think since, no one has ever proved a mathematical formula just to resolve the plot of a television episode.
So it's funny you mentioned that, because that episode didn't make my list either, but it does uh, work as a very good episode, and especially to prove the mathematical theorem. But I have this theory about that episode, and I don't remember if I've ever shared this with you. If you go back and look at various episodes throughout the show, you will find pieces of Professor talking about mind swapping. I think Ken Keeler had that theory in the back of his head for decades, and was popping in mind swapping stuff just as a thought experiment inside the show. And if you look at them all and you add it up, and then you watch Prisoner of Benda, you can actually see the professor basically building to that machine the entire show. And I can't tell if it was intentional. So Ken, if you're watching, I need you to reach out and tell me if you had this like planted all the way back then, and you've been working on this theorem and you figured it out, and then you had to write the episode.
Go ahead, get into these net suits. I designed and tested them myself. They smell like burning rhesus monkey.
Really? I guess when you're around it all day, you stop noticing. Everyone's always in favor of saving Hitler's brain, but when you put it in the body of a great white shark, ooh, suddenly you've gone too far. Oh, this old thing? I was experimenting to see if I could remove my own brain. Of course, I had the same idea. I flipped a coin to decide if I should proceed, but it came up tails, so I didn't. How'd it go? Well, getting the brain out was the easy part. The hard part was getting the brain out. Oh, you. Professor, something's bothering me. Well, you can always talk to me about anything, Fry. What's on your mind? There. This time I'm sure I've fixed the mind switcher.
Good. I'm sick of cleaning up those heaps of dead monkeys. But why would you want your mind in a new body?
Well, as a man enters his 18th decade, he thinks back on the mistakes he's made in life.
Like the heaps of dead monkeys?
Science cannot move forward without heaps.
So now we can get to my actual number 5. And for me, this is, I'm glad that you brought up the difference between favorite and best, because I don't know that and I think, and one thing that everyone watching this will learn as we go through this is that my 5 favorite episodes are actually kind of from a very narrow band of time in the show. And I tried to expand beyond that, but I can't get away from these ones. So one of the reasons that this is number 5 for me and makes my top 5 is because, again, it's not the best, but it has some of my favorite gags in any of the episodes. And I watch it over and over just for those moments. And the episode is War is the H Word. And from the beginning with the war were declared, they buy gum, or they get these discount cards so they can buy gum, and they say, and then we can quit, right? And the guy says, unless war were declared. And then the alarm goes off and they say, what's that? War were declared. So and zaps the element of surprise, and then he says surprise and just dumps them on. I mean, every one of those little stupid jokes lands, building to, I think, the greatest one in that episode, and one of the greatest things that Futurama did in its entire initial run, which is Bender's top 10 most used, where it's and just the delivery of the word pimpmobile in that top 10. I love it. I love it every time. I have watched the YouTube clip just of that part of the episode. I can't even tell you how many times. And the way that they work his top words into the episode, the ones that aren't his usual dialogue, before they even get to that, his use of chumps and chumpettes in that episode, hot diggity daffodil. I mean, it's so smart, as many of the episodes are. And so I love it.
I love that episode. I won't say where, but I will tell you that episode also made my list. That to me, for all the reasons you said, is one of the best future and my favorite Futurama episodes. But the other thing is, we mentioned earlier that it's hard for Futurama now to do cultural references because of how far it's come from both its original air date and how much Fry's been in the future.
I think I know where you're going with this.
But that episode was a MASH spoof.
Yes.
That is where Futurama excelled, where it made cultural references and spoofs and jokes about stuff that had happened prior to 1999 without deep diving into it, or without beating the dead horse. Because if you know MASH and you know the TV show, you immediately recognize it. If you don't know it and you don't get the reference, they never once say MASH or make an overt thing, but like the robot doctor in the tent is iHawk.
iHawk is
Hawkeye,
yes, and
right?
they're so whoever does the voice is doing an Alan Alda impression.
Picture perfect, right? And it's stuff like that where Futurama, that was the point of the show, is that you put somebody so far into the future and it's unknown, but it's still familiar, right? Yeah. And it just works on every level. The stuff with Leela being Leela man Lemon, right?
Lee Lemon, sir.
It's brilliant. I love that episode too. So War is the H Word is a brilliant pick. Would have been So angry had it not made your list. I great pick, great choice, great way to start off your list.
Thank you.
I guess we're on number 4. All right, so my number 4, in a similar fashion to the vignette, is Anthology of Interest number 1. So there were 2
Good
Anthology
pick.
of
Good
Interest
pick.
episodes. I like the first one a bit more. Episode is again these vignettes, these 3 little stories. First one is about you think Bender's going to ask about what if he was human, and then he asks what if he was 500 feet tall, and you get this great little story of Fry and Bender becoming friends, and Bender's taller than the Empire State Building, and randomly you get Hanson singing Bop in the middle of the story, which is a joy. Again, Futurama pulling from the past. Then the second vignette is Leela asking what happens if she becomes a little more impulsive, right? Just a little bit more impulsive. And it turns out that Leela is so on the edge of being impulsive that she is gonna murder everyone.
A little bit of a homicidal maniac.
Yeah. And you figure that she was just keeping that on the DL this whole time. Great. And then the third story is Fry with basically what happens if he hadn't gotten frozen, which is interesting not only from a story perspective, but you find out later in the series why that's such a big deal, right? Why him not being frozen would have caused all kinds of problems. But not only do you get a cool little story about this, you get the most random guest stars, I think, of the entire series. You have in the same 10-minute story, Gary Gygax, Dungeons and Dragons, Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek, Stephen Hawking, actual Stephen Hawking, and Al Gore, the real Al Gore. But keep in mind,
all of them playing themselves,
and
by
keep in
themselves.
Mind this episode aired. I have it up here. It aired on May 21st, 2000. Right, so Al Gore is basically about to run for president. Right, or
he's already running for president.
Is actively running, right? Because at the end of the year, he's like, right. So in the middle of his campaign, he goes and does a voice recording for Futurama, and it sounds very odd, and it arguably is, until you realize why he was willing to do it. And it's because his daughter Kristen Gore was a writer for the show. So I guess shout out to a fellow dad helping out their kids, but. Even accounting for that, it is just wild to have Al Gore be on a science fiction cartoon show. And spoiler, if you have never seen the entire series, he comes back in later episodes. He's in a Comedy Central episode too. And
the fact that Stephen Hawking, who has one of the easiest voices to fake, but they had actual Stephen Hawking use his computer to record these lines.
Yes. And my understanding is that he was ecstatic to do so because he comes back multiple times. He's in like 3 or 4 episodes throughout the whole series. And so those 3 stories together, I think, again, to my earlier point, create this sort of classic Futurama mindset of how you can take the normal and make it absurd in a different setting. But you also get good, strong character development, even though, and I'm going to spoil the ending for anyone who hasn't seen it. Sorry, it's 25 years later. Technically, the entire episode is a what if episode on its own. None of it actually happens because you find out the professor has done something in the beginning. But it's just a fun episode. I've never watched that episode and felt, okay, I've watched it enough times, right? I can watch that episode every time and get enjoyment from it. And that's why it's number 4 on my list.
I think that is a very good pick. My number 4 episode is 300 Big Boys. I don't know what it is about that episode. It's not on a lot of people's like top or favorite lists, but I think from start to finish, every gag, every joke, at least for me, just lands. It's just it feels like a tight episode. Like the plot,
it's clean. It's really clean.
It really is, and it everything, every little thread ends up wrapping up or coming together. Even like Bender is like, there's going to be no comeuppance for Bender, and then Bender at the very end gets his comeuppance for thieving the cigar that he buys the burglary to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also just has every character in it that you love. It has all the main characters. It has Zap Brannigan playing a central role. It has Mom at her like rich mommiest, not her evil mommiest, but like as her like, I am so wealthy that I don't care about this money, when Zoidberg is like, look how rich I am, Mom. And um I, so and like that's the thing about it. I can't, like, with the honorable mentions I just gave, I pointed to one point from each of those episodes that really I loved. This episode, there's no one point that I'm like, this is the best part of the episode. I'm just happy the entire time that I'm watching the episode. It doesn't have as high a high as many episodes, but the floor of it is also so much higher, I feel like, than most, at least to me, than of most Futurama episodes. And that's why it really like I come back to it frequently, because I know I'm just going to enjoy the whole episode.
It's funny. I never would have made any of my list, but you're right. There's not a single throwaway line in that episode, right? Every line of dialogue relates back to what's happening.
And everybody,
I never
and
would have thought of it,
everybody's,
but you're right.
yeah,
It's really
but
nice.
every side story is just, it's delightful. I mean, it's Leela and the whale biologist is fun. Fry drinking 300 cups of coffee is fun. Kif trying to keep this bicycle aloft is, and then having his watch fall and the whale eats, like, it's such a smart episode, but not in like the Futurama, like, you need a PhD to do this kind of smart, but just the way that it's put together. I think there are few episodes of any TV show and few episodes of Futurama that where the A, the B, and the C plot lines are all really the same thing.
I guess we're on number 3 here, right? So my number
Yes.
3 is, and we don't have to talk about how Alex we just did. My number 3 is War of the H Word, or War is the H Word, right? For all the reasons we already said. Plus, you get you not only get the ridiculousness of all of the various gags and all the things that land, you're getting a subtle or perhaps not so subtle commentary on the military-industrial complex, right?
Yep.
Why are the guy asking, why are we going to this godforsaken planet with no resources and no strategic advantage? Don't ask me. You're the one dying for it.
Yeah.
Surprise. It's
no one kill Kif either.
It's the epitome of what Futurama is meant to be as a science fiction show, as a commentary on what was then current time, and in the future what the future could look like, right? It hits that trifecta so well, and then you get all those glorious gags and those glorious one-liners. It might be, I have to check, it might be the first time we hear Fry singing Walking on Sunshine.
It might be. You're right.
He does it. He does it when he ends up as Kif's assistant, right? And he has to bathe him, essentially,
scrubbing his back.
Right,
yeah.
right. It's definitely one of the first few times you hear him sing it.
That episode does come before the Seymour episode,
right? But I can't remember if it's the first time we hear it. So that's my number 3, right? Because we already talked about it. So,
my number 3 is the Deep South.
Almost made my list.
Yeah, another one that it's such a fun episode. That's one of the ones where it's not like it's not like 300 Big Boys where it's so tight from start to finish.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun. It has one of my favorite gags that I think is a tremendously just underrated gag, which is right at the beginning of the episode, when they're underneath the ship, actually, before they go fishing, and Bender says, hey, we're in international waters now, and radios, and this boat comes and he makes an exchange. And you have no idea what the exchange is, but it's just, he turns to Fry, and is it Leela or the professor? I don't even remember who's down there with him, because it's about Bender, and he says, hey, guess what your accessories to? And I have told so many people how much I love that line, and everyone's like, it's a fine line, but I'm like, for me,
No, no, you gotta.
it is such a good joke.
Yes,
And we never find that, and it
yes,
never pays off, and that's okay in that
yes,
situation.
yes.
It's just it's a perfect gag. But then the whole underwater part of the episode, from Zoidberg's home that he builds underwater to the joke about the suppository when with the pressure pills, um to when Fry meets all meets the mermaid and goes and is hey, why is the water warmer over here all of a sudden? uh, and then they're next to the volcano vent and it's, hey, did it just get colder? um the fact that and then the spoof of the Donovan, of having Donovan narrate the
Yeah.
history of Atlanta, and even just the gag of the professor uncovering the letters and you think it's going to say Atlantis, and then again, because we're 1,000 years in the future, it is the lost city of Atlanta. um
The magician.
yeah. um and the caffeine speeding up evolution, not one of the more accurate scientific parts of the show. Yeah. um and it yeah, anyway, I don't know what else I need to say about it. It makes me happy to Fry's like just running back to try, why couldn't she have had the fish part on top and the lady part on the bottom?
So there's 2 points of that episode. And that's one of them where like breaks the fourth wall without fully breaking it. Right. That it's that one where the entire time you're thinking about, okay, he's gonna end up with the mermaid. How does that work? And oh wait, it doesn't. Um, and the other one is underwater.
Yep, I know what you're gonna
Zoidberg's
say.
house
Yes.
burns down, and Bender goes, "Oh, that's where my cigar went." And Hermes is like, "That just raises further questions.
Yeah.
So what is happening?"
So Zoidberg said, how could this have happened? And Hermes says, that's a very good question. And then that's where my cigar is. That just raises further questions.
So my number two is probably where most people would this probably cross over most people's best list, at least in a sort of maybe top 10 if not top 25. The Sting. So this is
Almost made my list.
yeah, so this is the episode where Fry, or maybe not Fry, gets stung by a giant wasp, has a major injury, and dies. Where we think he dies, and Leela has to go through, dealing with his death. And there's a twist at the end. I'm going to spoil it because again, it's 25 years old. Sorry if you haven't seen it. It turns out that Leela was the one that actually got injured, and she's been in coma. And what we've been watching is her dream state, basically. And the reason that I included it here, even more so there, is because this is where you really start to solidify the Fry and Leela relationship. You get moments of it before. I think this comes after Parasite's Lost. This is where Leela finally admits how she feels about Fry, right?
Yeah.
And there's lots of cool, funny gags in here, right? Like Fry's funeral's filled with all these women that he was romantic with in some way, from everything from the girl at the bar to the radiator that he apparently made out with, right? Like, there's all these funny things. But even if you know the ending, even if you know watching it that it is in fact Leela's, brain trying to heal, right? It's all a dream. It is heartbreaking when she gets to the end, right? Like she cannot handle her grief, right? And it starts to get crazy because she keeps waking up, and you're starting to wonder if you're going crazy watching it. And it's just, there is so much heart and emotion and deep resonating empathy with Leela in this episode that it really shows where Futurama turned the corner from just being a funny gag, make silly futuristic or historical jokes, to these characters have something there, and this is more than just a cartoon. I think that this is the episode that does that for me.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned that, like, even if you know the ending, and I actually think, I could say this because we've spoiled the ending and it's okay. I think once you know the ending, that Fry has been sitting by her bedside the whole time talking to her, hoping he could hear her, when you then go back and watch it again, knowing that, it makes it even sweeter, because you realize that, like, the whole I need you to wake up, like him saying that's him sitting at her, like,
Yeah.
when you know that, it just makes the episode even sweeter in that way,
Yeah.
as you're watching it.
Yeah, and this is one of a handful of episodes that does not end on a joke or a gag, right? Like, each one ends with them hugging and embracing.
Mm-hmm.
She might mention that, like, he needs a shower because he hasn't bathed, but like,
Yep.
it's it's sweet, but it's not a punchline, right? Um, and this is just that episode where even the funny parts in it, the more you get into the episode, the more you're invested in her grief, and as you said, knowing that it's Fry trying to break through. Even the one or two parts at the end that maybe you could consider a punchline or a gag or a joke are even written somewhat seriously because it gets that emotive. And Leela, at a certain point, basically says, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with him being gone. I can't deal with feeling like I'm going crazy, and I have to take steps to do that. And that's heavy for a cartoon. That's not,
Yeah.
BoJack Horseman, right? Like, it's um this was a serious moment. And um to her credit, Katie Seagal acted the hell out of this. This goes back to your point about voice actors, right? To versus just celebrity actors. Katie Seagal, of course, having she had a major career. She is probably the biggest celebrity on the show, and voices only one character as opposed to everyone else voicing 9,000.
Yeah.
Billy West carrying the show on his vocal cords. But this is the episode where Katie earned her paycheck, right? For not only this, but for the rest of the show. Like, this is why she was cast, because she can do stuff like this. Um, and this episode stings every time.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. And I mean, we'll stay on the emotional side of things because my number two is Luck of the Fryish.
Yeah.
And I mentioned before that it was going to be on my list, and it is, of the emotional episodes, it is the one that I can come back to without like wanting to just jump out of the nearest window. Like, let's not even start talking about Seymour. I will go to that episode on rewatches because it's there. Like, when I get to it, I'm like, all right, time for the episode. But I will
You,
not
you
seek it
mentioned that
out.
you fall asleep to the show, and I do too. And I have it on my phone where I can basically just scroll and pick any random episode. And there are times where I get to the Seymour episode, I have to pick another episode. Like,
Yeah, I'm
I
the
cannot
same
fall
way.
asleep to it.
But Luck of the Fryish, I can and do, and I'll just watch it also. And I think part of the reason that, or I guess the reason that of the emotional episodes that it is on my list, and there is some of this to Jurassic Park as well. But again, I can't do this with Jurassic Park, is that it's also an episode where we learn more about Fry's past.
Yeah.
And we learn about his childhood and his relationship with his brother. And and so the premise of the episode is that Fry thinks that his brother has basically stolen Fry's dreams after Fry disappeared, because we see when they were young that Yancey, his brother, is jealous of a lot of Fry's stuff, and Fry finds this lucky 7-leaf clover, and Yancey wants the clover, and then Fry in the future goes to find it, and it's not there. And then he sees a statue of what he thinks is his brother with the clover in his lapel, and it's the first man on Mars, which was Fry's dream. And then again, we can spoil it because it's 25 years old. We come to find out that it is not Fry, it is not Yancey, it is Fry's nephew, who Yancey named for his lost brother. And it's really sweet. As Bender goes to complete his Mouseketeer reunion skull collection in the cemetery, where Fry is going to retrieve the 7-leaf clover until he sees the epitaph that he was named for his uncle. And so it is a funny episode. It is a completely sweet at the end episode that makes me tear up every time, but doesn't quite hurt me as much as Jurassic Park, because it is happy tears. It is sweet. It is not sad. I mean, we all wish that Fry could have gotten to know his nephew, but it's a happy tears ending. And so that's for all of those reasons, it is why it is so high on my list, and it is the one that is both on people's favorite lists and on best episodes of Futurama
Yeah.
lists.
No, there's
And
no
much
question that it
much
is.
like The Sting, it is the writers showing that they can write more serious into this funny show.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that it is one of the best episodes of the series. And to your point, Jurassic Park with Seymour and the dog is a gut punch, right? Like that one's going to take you out. This one is that brotherly embrace, right? Like that true hug, right, that you need, and because you follow Fry, because the only glimpses up until that episode we have of his past, we get a couple here and there of his parents or his brother, and um, either mentions or quick flashbacks, and it just seems like they're a I don't know a better phrase than white trash, blue collar esque type of family. Um, but then you get this heartwarming story at the end, and we I don't know about you, even the first time I watched it, I'm never mad at his brother. I'm never mad the way Fry is, but I feel for him, right? Like you feel,
Yeah.
oh, like his brother stole his life. That's sad, but Fry, dude, he's been dead 1,000 years, right? Like it's
Yeah.
okay. I'm sorry you feel, and then you realize, oh no, his brother remembered him and memorialized him, and his nephew is named after him, and his nephew had this great life because of the 7-leaf clover that Fry, and um, it's like, oh buddy, oh buddy, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to reach through the screen and give Fry that hug.
And the scene where we get to see that Fry never gets to see, but we get to see, of Yancey giving the clover to
Right.
Philip, the nephew.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and if we're forgetting the best part of all this whole episode, which is uh the hiding place that Fry uses is the vinyl of the soundtrack for Breakfast Club, and the closing credits come up with "Don't You Forget About
Forget
Me"
about
from the
me.
movie, and like, bam, you are hitting the heartstrings on that one.
And again, things references to the not too distant past that worked then that wouldn't work
Yeah,
now. The
yeah,
Ronco record vault, like the reference to Ronco that comes up
yeah,
in this episode, and
yeah,
Ron Popeil, who appears, I think, in a few, like I think they make reference to different Ronco things a couple times
yeah.
throughout Futurama. Um, but and Bender knowing the Ronco's weakness of the frequency.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and we get to Old New York, right? We get down there.
we get to Old New York without going to the mutant part of Underground.
Right. Which I
We do meet his neighbor who has his mutated, I
yeah,
mutated from, yeah,
yeah, who was sober apparently that day.
yeah.
But the geography of and the layers of New York, I've never fully figured out. I don't know where the mutants are versus Old New York is, and
Yeah, I don't know if they know either, but
yeah, so
it's whatever they need for that
I
episode.
was gonna say it's the geography is plot. Um, See, that's funny because plot is also a land thing. See, it's a two.
Yes, I
It's a Futurama joke right there for you. The house, when you come to it in the future, is dilapidated and torn down, and then they flash back, and it's the same condition in
yes,
the 80s.
such a good guest sight gag.
Right, and there's so many of those, and then the episode nails you right in the heartstrings.
Yeah.
It's great in every way. All right, and I think that brings us to the top of our list here, right? So my number one is one that I think you'll go, oh, okay, I get it, but it's not one again that would make anybody's list. So my favorite episode of the whole series is the third episode of the series, I Roommate.
That is number 6 on my list.
Okay. Yeah.
It is the last episode that did not make my top 5.
Yeah, I Roommate's my favorite, and I will watch it every time I can always sit there. And the reason is because, to me, while we've talked about things that are the essence of the show or how the show did things XYZ so well, this, more than even the other two previously, the pilot and series has landed, this is where the show starts. This is the origin of the show. You get the Bender Fry relationship. You get Fry hinting at his love and at least attraction to Leela. You get the professor in the beginning being just a true mad scientist. You get all of these side characters, right? Like Hattie coming in and as the landlady, right? You solidify what is the foundation of the rest of the show, and then the ending where So the premise of the episode of Anyone Knowledge is that Fry has been living at the offices of Planet Express and basically gets kicked out. It's like, stop it, go find a place.
It's
And
one of the great early gags in that episode is when Hermes puts Fry in charge of figuring out why the water usage has gone up ever since Fry has moved in, and since the timing is the same, Fry is the perfect guy to figure this out.
yes, and then it cuts to Fry in the shower.
Yeah.
The emergency hazmat shower. You figure out why Fry has the hair horn, because he's been using the jets from the spacecraft to blow dry his hair. And
Healthy dose of radiation and great lift.
Great lift, that's right. And so you get all these silly little things, but Fry then ends up living with Bender, who as a robot lives in a literal closet. And you cut to the end, and it turns out that Bender's closet for his apartment is this giant, 1,000 square foot unit where Fry can live, essentially, right? And so again, it's sight gags, it's humor, it's funny, it's taking the normal and making it absurd from the everyman perspective from us in the past. But it's also what the show uses to get through every other relationship, every other storyline. It is what Futurama starts out being. And if you compare that episode, I Roommate, to any episode made, certainly on the Hulu era, arguably even in most of the Comedy Central episodes, they don't, it's like they're missing it. It's like they forgot what it's supposed to be about. And that episode,
it's I mean, like from the Odd Couple montage of them going to all the different apartments, to, I mean, when they move into Dr. Mobutu's apartment, and then the cable doesn't work when Bender's around, or the satellite, and again, things that have kind of leapt out of Futurama into the people's general memification of the world is the to shreds you say. The number of times I will go into a Reddit thread about something bad happening, and someone will comment, "To shreds you say," and then the next two comments will be, "And his wife." To shreds you say. It's just that.
Yeah, and they find this perfect apartment, and oh, what's the catch? Well, there's no catch, but technically we are New Jersey, not one livable place. It's just it does everything that Futurama needs to do. To me, that episode is the thesis of Futurama, right? It's not necessarily the point or the best of Futurama, right? You get things like Fryish and Jurassic Park, but it is the core principle of what Futurama should be based on. Everything's in that 20.
You've made me upset it didn't make my top 5 now, but no, it's
good.
because everything that you've said is you're absolutely right. It is, the pilot is great, and the series has landed is great, but you don't really know what this show is going to be until you get to I Roommate, and then you're like, okay, now I get it. Now I see like how this show is going to work.
I actually think Space Pilot 3000 and Series of Land, I count them as one episode, right? I think it's one 2-parter episode, right? You get Fry coming to the future, and then you get the first adventure he has, which is going to the moon, right? And you realize that going to the moon is silly for everyone else because they're in the future, but to him it's exciting, and that's us, right? He's the perspective of us. Those two episodes go together, and then you get I Roommate, and it's like, oh, this is what the show is. So,
well, my number one episode is not that deep, but it is the one episode that I just it is, to me, it is just the funniest, just wildest, and just I would watch it every day. And it's Roswell That Ends Well.
Yes,
I love everything about that episode. So the premise of this episode is they go out to watch a supernova, which none of them have, and Fry notes that if it's anything like his old Chevy Nova, it's going to be spectacular. Fry has to make popcorn, but is in a hurry, and it's one of those old-fashioned, metal aluminum popcorn things that you put in your stove. But he, of course, puts it in the microwave, outsmarting the microwave by tearing the "Do Not Microwave" tag off of the popcorn, which, of course, will work. So metal in the microwave causes blue, That's the result is blue. It's not a it's I mean I was going to say it's not a smell, but he does say what smells like blue. Um, and the supernova interacts with the blue and sends them to the past, to Roswell, New Mexico.
In what year?
In is it 1947?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I even got the year right. That's how many times I've watched this episode. The alien landing, and so they are the aliens that landed in
Yes.
Roswell.
Yes.
And then Fry meets his what we think is his grandfather, who is serving on a military base, and has to try to keep his grandfather alive so that Fry can then exist in the future.
And existing
and
is basically all he does.
That's yes. But it just and it is one of those episodes where, I mean, they all end up back together in the end, but it is one of those episodes where the A plot, the B plot, and the C plot, like they don't all have to work together. They can all, and so we are following Zoidberg, the alien that they have now discovered. We are following Fry and his grandfather, and we're following the professor and Leela, who are trying to get a microwave, which of course does not yet exist, to get back to the future. And as they go to an old appliance store to try to find a microwave, and this old timey salesman is trying to sell them a stove and telling the professor that his wife is hysterical, as they did in the 40s, and Leela, as they do in the year 3000, is having none of it. And watching the professor and Leela try to order at a diner when they're trying to order injections from the year 3000 or pills from the year 3000, that of course don't exist in the 40s. And it is just I mean, I said this about some of my other picks, but every gag lands. Every gag is perfectly written, perfectly acted and delivered. Fry finding out that his grandfather is gay and just being completely horrified because he thinks he needs his grandfather to have sex with his grandmother so that he can exist. To then getting his grandfather blown up in a nuclear test. And
now,
Bender's
wait a minute.
line,
If his grandfather gets blown up, how does Fry still exist? Tell the lovely viewers, Bobby.
well, as we learn in another episode, as Fry likes to put it, he did do the nasty in the pasty. Once his grandfather is gone, or as Bender puts it so eloquently, and you are out of here. Fry determines that his what he thought was his grandmother can't possibly be his grandmother, because what he thought was his grandfather is dead. And his grandmother in 1947 is this really hot young thing who turns to Fry for comfort. And
boy, does she get it.
And the past nastification happens, and Fry is, in fact, his own grandfather, which, as we learn later, is why he is missing the delta brainwave that makes him immune to the giant brains in an episode we're not discussing, but where Stephen Hawking does make a return. And which episode, I can't remember if it's, because there's two episodes with the giant brains, and I can't remember if it's The Why of Fry or if it's the other one where all that happens. But anyway, The Why of Fry never making any of my top lists, simply for the fact that Nibbler disses the Dave Matthews Band, and I cannot abide that. We do learn, though, kind of sideways from that Fry is a fan of the Dave Matthews Band, which so good for Fry. But Nibbler, no. So
I feel like
that episode's out just for that.
Such an advanced, they're so super advanced. They might be able to assess music better, though. So
I don't know about that, but anyway, but all of that stuff stems from Roswell that ends well as well, which it doesn't feel like such an important episode when it happens. It feels like kind of a just fun, let's go to the past thing. But it ends up being the basis for some really important plot points as we move forward in the series, too.
Yeah, it's funny because I read somewhere that one of the rules that Matt and David Cohen, who also founded the show, one of the rules they had was that they didn't want to do time travel, right? That they send Fry to the future and that's it. He's in the future, right? Because doing time travel in science fiction is obviously very, very easy to lean into, but it for a show like this, where you're taking this Gen X delivery boy slacker into the future, the second you introduce time travel, it negates that purpose, right? So they did it very sparingly. This is the first time they do it, and they do it in a very, very fun and silly and gaggy way that works really well. But you're right that it is the entire thread that pulls the rest of why Fry's in the future together. I mentioned earlier in Anthology of Interest that Fry not getting frozen has major consequences. And the reason is because we find out he has to get frozen because he doesn't have the Delta brainwave, which lets him defeat the big brain, which comes from the fact that he slept with his own grandmother, which comes from this episode. Like the threads that it pulls together, right, is just extraordinary across what was years of this show, because you don't find all of this stuff out until literally the end of the Fox era. And they pull on it again in Comedy Central, but these guys had this laid out from episode 1 all the way through the end, and you're just getting pieces here and there. And this is the first time we find a major piece of the puzzle and realize how much it impacted the rest of the show later on.
Yeah, so it is, and I think all of that combined is what makes it my number one. Is that it is both an important episode for the whole through line of the show, but also just one of the laugh out loud funniest episodes of the whole series to me. Everything Zoidberg does in that episode cracks me up so much. Episode is just absolutely hilarious. And everything that Fry's adventure with his grandfather, who's not his grandfather, is with Enos is just it's just so funny. I mean, that episode, like I said, it makes me laugh out loud more than any other. And if that's not the purpose of a show like this, then what is? And so, I think maybe even if it wasn't important to the overall architecture of the show, it might still be my number one, because what is a better way to judge what to you personally is the best episode of a comedy show than the one that gives you the most laughs? And
Yeah,
to me,
fair.
that's Roswell as Enswell.
Yeah. Fun trivia about that episode. It is one of the very few, and I think there's a handful, maybe even less than 5, that the title of the episode appears in the episode. Because it appears on the missile.
Yes, it does.
Right, it's one of the very few. I really think there's maybe 3, 4, 5 at most in the entire run of the show that the title appears, and that's one of them. But you're right, and it's funny because we've talked about all these really heartfelt, really big emotional episodes. The Sting, Luck the Irish, right? We mentioned Jurassic Park several times, but at the end of the day, it is a comedy cartoon show, right? It is meant to be funny. And to your point, Roswell is arguably one of the funniest episodes, period. And both in terms of the gags it has and the amount of funny gags it has,
Yes.
right? I mean, every episode has a good joke or two, but this one's got them all. And it's gonna make you either smile or true guffaws every time. And I appreciate your metric of that. Is if you're going to watch a funny show, the episode that makes you laugh the most is arguably going to be the favorite episode. Let's call out the fact that while I had one from the Comedy Central, you did not, and neither of us had any of the Hulu episodes. Right? There's now 2 seasons of Hulu. There's about to be a third, and I think there's a 4th coming sometime in the future as well. There was 1 or 2 Hulu ones that were okay. I actually was going back as I was putting my list together and literally reading through the plot of some of these because I didn't remember them. I don't remember the Hulu ones.
I have not revisited the Hulu ones. I think I don't know that I've seen any of them more than once. I might have watched a couple of them a second time, but from the first Hulu season before the second Hulu season.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll go back and watch them again before the 3rd Hulu season, but I don't know. And I'll watch this 3rd Hulu season because I'm not going to not be a Futurama completist at this point. But I wish I had higher hopes, and maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe they will figure out what went wrong with the first 2 Hulu seasons and fix it. But again, I'm not one of those people, and neither are you, who is just going to blindly praise this show because of how much it's meant to us and how much we've loved it over the last quarter century. I mean, we were teenagers when this show started, and we are now adults with our own kids.
Wait, maybe it's our fault.
Yeah, it could be. but I mean, obviously no disrespect to anyone involved with the show, and I would, I would like to hope I would tell them this to their faces if I was ever lucky enough to talk to any of them. But like, I I hope they surprise us,
Yeah.
and I'm not taking anything away from what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
But I'm going in with, I think, lower expectations than I have ever had for a season of Futurama before, and I'm sad that I have to say that, but it's true.
Yeah. But as we've just gone through the last hour, we still have our old favorites to look back on.
Yes.
So I think that's it. I think that's the thought to end on. So we can always go back and watch our favorites. Thank you for watching Dad of Hobbies. Like, follow, subscribe, etc. And then you'll see what hobby we get into next time. And we'll see you then.